What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be the start of a 6-part series video where I go over the best offensive and defensive stat focus for every available 7-star of each class. These videos aren't meant to be super long. I'm just going to go in order from the 7-star champions that I have per class of what stat focus I run and why I run it. So we're just going to start, I think, alphabetically probably makes the most sense. So let's start from the top of the alphabet here in terms of available 7-stars. Now I have all of the available 7-stars on my roster, and then of course we can talk about the unowned ones that I have. But we'll start off here with Bishop. So a lot of these champions are going to run similar stat focus, but some of them will differ depending on certain situations. So Bishop's offensive stat focus should be crit, no real explanation needed there. More crits are better. And then defense, I personally run Pierce, but it would make sense to run something like physical or energy resistance, and also special damage makes a lot of sense too. I think special damage might actually be a better stat focus to run, because if you do get clipped, it is going to hurt a lot more than not getting clipped, you know? Taking the hit on the block and dexing it is going to deal less damage than missing the dex and getting hit. So I think special damage is probably the best for him, but Pierce is totally fine. Pierce is a fantastic defense stat focus, and then energy and physical resistance are also great. Moving on to Colossus, pretty standard here. Colossus should just run crit, and then defense doesn't really matter. Pierce is probably what I would suggest, but also not a bad idea to run armor on Colossus. Danny Moonstar, again, sort of the same thing. Crit is the best thing for Danny on offense, and then defense doesn't really matter. Pierce is just going to increase that chip damage from parries and blocked hits, so Pierce seems like the best thing to do. Special damage from Danny is also not a bad shout, but you're going to be baiting her special one more often than not, so don't worry about the special damage on her for defense. Dazzler, critical damage is the best stat focus to run on offense. The reason being, her special 2, if you perform all of the inputs correctly, the last hit is a guaranteed crit. So you want that crit to be hitting harder, so critical damage makes the most sense. And then Pierce is the standard defense stat focus for Dazzler. Deadpool X-Force, he's kind of a fun one because you don't necessarily need to run crit. You can actually run whatever is necessary for a matchup in front of you. If you need some more physical resistance or energy resistance, I actually think energy resistance is a really solid stat focus for him, and also block proficiency. I just have crit because I'm not using him for any content right now that requires me to change the stat focus. So at a base, it's good to run crit for him just because more crits are better. But with Deadpool, he really benefits from stat focus because you can use it in way more avenues. Obviously, you can do that with any champion, but Deadpool benefits from it more because he doesn't rely on the crit stat focus for the damage. He can actually utilize other attributes of it and gain a lot of benefit. And then defense, Pierce, just very typical, very standard. Moving on to Domino. Domino, you probably want to run the crit stat focus on offense. I could also see running some sort of critical damage or block penetration on offense. That wouldn't be bad, but crit seems like the best thing. And then on defense, I actually think the energy resistance is the best for her because there are a lot of champions that counter Domino that deal energy damage, you know, one of them being Shuri. So slowing down Shuri in, you know, PvP game modes with the stat focus of energy resistance makes a lot of sense and makes the most sense for a champ like Domino. Dust, I like Dust a lot. I really need to rank her up. I don't know why she's still rank 1. The best offense stat focus is going to be crit, and then defense is Pierce, taking those specials on the block. Not fun. Also baiting block from Dust combos because of those non-contact hits that Pierce is going to add up. So Dust, pretty standard, pretty simple. Gambit, so Gambit definitely needs the crit on offense, and then defense doesn't really matter. Gambit's not a defender; you can just throw whatever. I have Pierce because it's standard, but you can do whatever you fancy for Gambit on defense. Doesn't really matter. Havok. So Havok on offense, I like crit because crit means special damage. Crits more good. I lost my train of thought there. I have crit on Havok because when specials crit, they deal more damage, and Havok is a prowess champion, so you want to be throwing a lot of specials with him. So getting that special 2 or special 1 to crit more often than not is definitely going to be to your benefit. So run crit on offense, and then defense, I think Pierce is good, but I also don't think running physical resistance would be bad, because Havok already has a bit of I think he has native energy resistance in his kit. Yeah, so he has native energy resistance. So if you were to throw physical resistance on there as well, you're giving him both resistances. So if you don't want to run Pierce, which is the standard, I think physical resistance is actually not a bad thing to run for Havok, giving him both physical and energy resistance. Not every champion in the game can say they have that. Magneto, House of X, crit, very standard, and then for offense, and then defense doesn't really matter. Special damage might be good because getting clipped by a champion's special attacks such as Magneto hits pretty hard, so special damage seems like a good stat focus there. Mr. Sinister. Something about Mr. Sinister that I love is very similar to Deadpool, where stat focus on offense isn't really super impactful. Of course, running crit is nice for when your heavies and specials crit, but you could easily run something like block proficiency, physical resistance, special damage, energy resistance. Anything really works for Sinister. So I highly recommend running crit at a base, but you can really run anything for Sinister. So it's whatever you choose, whatever the matchup entails. If you need more block proficiency, if you need some energy resistance, that's a very popular one. You can run that with Sinister. But I recommend crit and also energy resistance and block proficiency as the main ones. And then defense, yeah, Pierce makes the most sense. You don't really need anything else. I guess you could run some sort of energy or physical resistance, but he's going to throw debuffs back at you, so doesn't really matter, and for the most part, you're not going to be baiting Special 1 if you're using a non-robot champion. So I think Pierce makes the most sense. More chip damage on parry, good time. Namor, kind of cut and dry. Crit, more special crits, the better. And then Pierce on defense makes the most sense. Again, resistance makes sense on defense as well, but Pierce, more chip damage. So that's Namor. NTW, Negasonic Teenage Warhead. I like this champion a lot. I actually want to rank 3 here pretty badly. I'm a big fan of this champ. Pierce on defense, absolutely 100%. The non-contact attacks, you're going to be parrying a lot of those blocking hits, so more damage is better. And then on offense, she feels good with crit, but I also would not be totally opposed to running something like block proficiency just to guarantee the perfect parries, because she is a little squishy. She doesn't have the highest health pool in the game, so ensuring that she can stay alive longer with that block proficiency, not a bad thing. Nightcrawler, personal favorite of mine, big fan of Nightcrawler. Definitely want to run crit on offense. The more crits that Nightcrawler deals on any attacks, the more bleed and the more damage, so obviously run that. And then on defense, I think Pierce is definitely the way to go because most people are not going to want to learn the Nightcrawler swap trick, or they don't have the time to do it in a matchup. So taking those blocked hits and parries and blocking specials and baiting block and whatever, the Pierce is going to make that a lot better for Nightcrawler on defense. So that's what I recommend for him there. Northstar. So I'm not the most well-versed in Northstar, but I do think crit is the best for him on offense. I think that's widely regarded as the best. And then defense, it seems like physical resistance is okay. Pierce is also great because he has multi-hit combos. So taking multi-hit combos onto the block, it hurts a lot more than it would compared to not having Pierce. So I just swapped him to Pierce. I do plan to rank my Northstar pretty soon here, but that seems like the best stat focus for him as of right now. Omega Red. So Omega Red, I think the best stat focus for him might actually be block proficiency, just because you're going to be blocking a lot of hits with Omega Red to keep your degenerations up. So taking less damage from block makes sense when using Omega Red, so block proficiency seems like the best stat focus for him, and that's what I would recommend running, as opposed to the generic run crit. And then defensively, doesn't really matter. I think block proficiency or block penetration would be fine. I also think running one of the resistances would also be good. Typically, when you're fighting Omega Red, you want to be using a robot, and robots tend to deal energy damage, so energy resistance makes a lot of sense for Omega Red, but again, it doesn't really matter. Omega Red's not nearly the defender that he used to be. Onslaught. Onslaught 100% needs crit on offense. Crits mean Neuroshocks, and Neuroshocks mean faster ramp, so don't even worry about any other stat focus for Onslaught offensively. Defensively, however, I think there are 2 great stat focuses for Onslaught. I think Pierce is one of them, and I think another one is physical resistance. Now, the reason I say physical resistance is Onslaught actually has negative physical resistance, but with the stat focus, he can bring this negative into a positive. So instead of being at negative physical resistance, he now has plus 7.9% physical resistance at his base. So this is probably the best stat focus to run for Onslaught on defense because it balances out his resistances, and it also gives him more resistance than he usually would have had. But Pierce is also great because, you know, taking blocked hits, block baiting against Onslaught, more damage on that chip is better. So that's for Onslaught. Platinumpool doesn't really matter. He's a trophy champion. You're not going to be using him anywhere. I think Crit, Pierce, very standard, very simple. Professor X. Now, Professor X defensively does not really matter. Don't really worry about it. He's not a defender. You're not going to be placing Professor X for Alliance War defense. But if you do, put Pierce because it makes sense. Offense, gotta be crit. Has to be crit. You might think you want special damage, but special damage is going to be amplified by his base prowess. So don't worry about special damage. Definitely run crit on Professor X. It is the best thing for him. Just like a lot of mutants, you know, Bishop, Dust, Sauron, another one to run crit on offense. It's basically the best stat focus overall, but some champions require different stat focus, and that's why I'm making this video. So we're going through the whole list here. In terms of defense, I think Sauron is fine with special damage. Again, getting hit by Sauron, sort of similar to the whole idea of Bishop. If you're blocking hits against both of them, yeah, the Pierce is going to be nice, but if you get clipped, special damage is going to deal more than Pierce would, because Pierce is only blocked hits, you know? Obviously, Pierce works for, like, piercing armor as well, but you're noticing that mostly on blocked hits. Special damage, that's just a flat special damage increase by, I think, 12%, yeah. So, pretty significant bump, you know? So that's what I'd say for Sauron. Storm Pyramid X, I think crit is easily the best thing for her on offense. Critting on those special hits, especially with a lot of prowess, good time. And then defense, I think Pierce is great. I also don't think energy resistance is bad. So a lot of the best counters to Storm typically tend to be champions that have energy damage. So if you want to run energy resistance, bring that up to 18%, 18.1% for both physical and energy resistance. If you just apply it, they just immediately benefit from it. I think that not a bad call either, but Pierce is obviously a great way to go. Either of those two work very well for Storm. Stryfe easily crit on offense and defense. Pierce not gonna waste too much time on Stryfe. Very simple. Sunspot. Not a defender, so don't necessarily worry about the defensive stat focus. I have Pierce because it's the standard one. But on offense, it's got to be crit. Sunspot critting on those basic hits, on those specials. The damage goes from amazing to astronomical. So definitely run crit on Sunspot. Wolverine Weapon X, kind of a fun one. Running crit on both offense and defense. The reason being, if you get hit by Weapon X and it's not a crit, it doesn't hurt as bad. If you get hit by Weapon X and it is a crit, it hurts really bad. So run crit on both offense and defense because Weapon X, he's pretty fun like that. He's pretty fun. And then that cycles back to Bishop. But there are 4 champions unowned that I have not talked about. So OG Deadpool, very similar to the original Platinumpool that I already mentioned. Just run crit on offense and block and pierce on defense. Emma Frost, very good character. I highly recommend crit on offense for Emma Frost. It seems like the absolute best one. And then defense, I think block penetration is definitely the way to go. Blocking those hits in diamond form is going to cause more chip damage. I also don't think special damage is a bad call because, again, sort of similar to Bishop, Sauron, getting hit by specials means you're taking way more damage than you would have if you just blocked them. So either of those two work very well for Emma. Gentle, very new champion. Not my favorite character, but definitely still a good character. I think crit on offense makes the most sense. He has a very low base crit rating, so you want to increase that damage by quite a bit. And then defense, I think block penetration is fine, but I also think that running energy resistance is not a bad call because Gentle gains a lot of physical resistance from his base kit, so adding in an additional bit of energy resistance, not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. Kind of giving him the best of both worlds in terms of the defensive resistances. So either of those two, Pierce or energy resistance, works for Gentle. And then finally, we have Storm here. Very simple. Run crit on offense, run block penetration on defense. So that is it in terms of the mutant class and the mutant class's stat focus. So, if you enjoyed this video, and I really hope that you did, please consider dropping a like on the video and also hitting the subscribe button. Both of those things greatly help me out, and I would love to make more content like this going forward. I just need to see that people are watching it and supporting the content, and if they are, more content like this will absolutely happen. So, be on the lookout for the remaining videos of 7-star champion stat focus going forward. I don't know when they're going to be coming out, but I plan to make all 6 classes and cover all of them in the current game. So, yeah, be on the lookout for that. And I appreciate you all watching. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.